Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, the only merit and good qualities, vast of notion to the thought, I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace, I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path, the freedom too well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame, a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for the sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your true body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam guruna mandalakam niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah, that is. Oh yeah.
익성견라.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, dear. Sanjay 좀 되게 또 자체를 그 숨고도와. 그래서 시숨니다 되게 tindanras. Shiba comes from Sungara, there comes some sumi comes. Comes some quag. Quakongian is kilometer sumyora. Dengam sungam sumi come garazo dengam kitara. Sisumita. Oh, did someone tempted midabas? Sisumita, don't get in that rush. Oh, then garazo Nation Jigdisgura, Sira or Kangimla Soba. Oh, tennis. That's just how much I'm here. Meda what is or a season meda, no jigdadil. Jishina tell us of what a chicken come in the order, desert sigura. Oh, dear, the season meda. Don't get in the rush, come meda, Keji in Juan don't get. Dembo menge, eat a menge, raw. Season meda, don't get in the don't get in the long that intention I want to look to Chichang with any Kadina look to Chindura. When the season with that don't get in the rush. No change get Sungora. Many sumida tunga tindanda, dhruya kichi kala tata sus, tatila nengengi dhruwa nga rasu mida, tundula sopa sim yongengi rik, soa tidu nyongengi rik shiwara, o tizu kanga sungu wara, dhruya kichi kiene kashe mile ki, lala ki, lama ile ki, tundula ki, rwa yang tani chipu ni yang shenda chili ki, nyeba ki yomara, sosa rawa ki yomara, le da nyemu be shawa kare sa le kare sa ina ti le kien kare chena ti on de doni kyon da medalen ku yora dre kichi kala ta ta sus de ga tham gen de shimu ne chire te wara pindi dre kichi kala ta ta su dre chen do se ta ko kyo sang bu ri lang ye na kyo de yu ring bu se te ku yora kyo ngen ba shi lang ye na tin gyo ba so che shen da shi li ke ku yora ina ti yong be nge ba ke yo mara dōya cendō se yu rinpoche ngā rāsu midachi na se yu rinpoche tēgu samsāga samu yuwa te ti tētu e ke o mara dōya cendō se namke lo dan rās e ko lubur to jōne korā sote rangi ngāngi jiru re se wara namke lo de ko rangi ngāngi jiru doa lubur to chi chōne ne lubur to pā jiru wara rangi ngāngi namke lo ndate ni risar bamju shidu te anko 대에 제가 말로 조에 맞듯이 그 조에 맞듯이 리사르 추디만 dondo가 맞도 텔레토스 때는 드레스케요 말하고 세 조도 그래서 오래전다 조배 소스 dondo가 맞도 데 대시 los 대스케요 말아 드레스도 남게 말해 리사르 밥주 신도 뉴 도스 오야 어디치람냐 망도치 다들
So here, as the Buddha, the Bhagavan, has stated in a sutra called the Extensive Sport or Extensive Play Sutra, he says these three realms are like autumn clouds. So the beings who inhabit this are like actors in a play. Their life span is like flashingly short, like a flash of lightning, and is continuously exhausting, sort of like a mountain waterfall. So here, the three realms, here referring to the desire, the material, and the immaterial realms, and we being in the desire realm, these are all impermanent. The kind of container world, the world within which we live, our environment, our abodes, and so forth, that container world is impermanent. It's something that changes moment to moment in the way that autumn clouds will gather, like when the winds are right, but they quickly disperse, dissipate. So this is something that is brought about by the winds, but it's not very stable. And so too, our external environment, the world within which we live, is something that is impermanent, changing moment to moment. And those beings who inhabit it, the kinds of various types of beings, sometimes we're human, sometimes we're gods, sometimes demigods, sometimes born in the lower realms, they're sort of like actors in a play, right? We are subject to taking rebirth due to the force of our afflictions. Whatever kinds of karma that we have created due to our afflictions propels our future rebirths. And we sort of are like shifting parts, shifting positions like actors in a play. We are not remaining the same. And so too, if we are born in, say, a good rebirth as a human or a god, we hope and pray that that will be a long rebirth, that we will remain there for a long time. And if we were to be born in the lower realms, we hope that that will quickly be passed over, that it will quickly end. But really, the life of beings is like a flash of lightning. It's something that disintegrates from its own cause. It doesn't need some sort of external cause to come about, but is something that is, by its very nature, impermanent, is just like a flash, and then it is gone, no matter how much we might want to remain within a certain life. And so it's the case that our lifespan is sort of like always constantly being exhausted, constantly being used used up, in the way that a mountain waterfall is quickly going downhill. The kind of life, no matter how much we might want to hold on to it, is something that is quickly disappearing right beneath us. So, as this verse says again, this kind of container world, these three realms are like autumn clouds, impermanent. And the beings within them are sort of like actors in a play whose lifespan is like a flash of lightning, constantly being exhausted like a mountain stream going quickly downhill. Oh, yeah, again.
뭐야, 뭐 어디서? 어디 인데 그런다? 뭐야? 된다 가르쳐 버렸으나 소소 내인에 들어와 대서 내인한다. 소소 뒤따도 때다 만들어서 대개에게 손듯이 삼로요라. 어디 삼로내시 용토에 말하고 가와가와도 줘야 될 것이. 가와가와 레트 배낭가 저리 자세는 아메리카도 도와레리 삼사 삼로날 밍터 마도 깨요 말아. 야 보가지네 지지 소소 당부께서 대체 뒤에네 진도고 요리 다다다지도 거의 뒤 강바다 강가야 요 말에 동바동자사사래 식사래 매사래 어디나시 양롱버신다시 레서 자가도 와실래 지세 양도 와치네 또 도발래 그 코란래 그 카바리스 텐두인다 또 알레르 마다 실리아 텐데시네 그때요 말아 진데 그 내이나 근데나 롱줄에 서버 강가 대외 출신이 삼상 직배 출신 깨지깨지 주안도데 나라도 도시디 땅진디 와라 듄디지식도 단대 뒤에 마음바 다나시 때 인삼사시 와라 딜리 땅지시 와라 예매데 단다 예에서 단다데 마음바 때게 인삼사 디 땅지시 와라 어디 왕게 아니 최신만 부트니 시주매게 삼르스레 땅제 배 심먹어도 너 먹어르지 내가 되게도 왔고 양가 뒷장자 내가 적으라 수수 내중 원에도 가리나 대다 소소 디도 용게지 소자 디도 된다고 소자 에네고 고네 내주디 가래 대화동에 가게 영향이 받지 삼을다 거라 소소 삼보다신 요요 말도 어디데 미다보 내다 이네다 류이네다 롱주 이네다 그러와 어디서 정말 단다 여반나시 때게 매삼 때 깨지긴 좋아지기 와라 깨지긴 좋아지는 도 되게 삼 대삼배네고 당진이 전에 짠의 시주매게 배 잠불이 되나를 니만에 대 단다 대인 삼사 로 어딘데 삼르도 매나 왜네고 정말 대외 출신 집에 출신 어딘데 지 삼르 코레나 내들 신자의 숙소도라 소설리는 그가 신자 숙소시 그 내가 류초에 된도 고야를 지려줘라 대서지 고라 전도를 지내 고라 대서를 지지도 대서를 지고라 근데 그 내가 류초에 된도네 내가 류도 놓줄을 소버티서 간가 고야지를 대점지 인삼사 삼고나 내가 디파사에 더 가서 그래 뒤던달에 디파사에 더 지금 진짜 망부진 더 어려우라 나 어디 질랍나 맞아
So, here, the meaning of this is whatever our sort of abode or the place that we live in, we often have this sense of, oh, I'll always be here, or this is something that is really permanent, that will remain unchanging. But this is obviously not the case. Like for those, like for example, me who was born in Tibet, you have this sense of like, oh, my house, this is my abode, my place, I'll always be here. Well, that's not the case. That's like probably completely empty and destroyed. And so too, then you get carried by your karma to other different places. And these are all sort of impermanent. The abode, the place where we live, the things that we enjoy are all impermanent, are changing, disintegrating moment to moment. And we are subject to sort of following after the karma that we have created. So one of the worst afflictions we have is this grasping at permanence, this idea that, oh, well, I'm going to have have this, I'm going to just still be here, right? We make all kinds of plans with this thought that our abode, our body, our enjoyments and possessions are permanent, as if they weren't going to change and disintegrate. But yet, it is the case that that is the reality. They are going to disintegrate. They are disintegrating moment to moment. And so rather than grasping at those phenomena as being permanent somehow, we need to think about our future happiness and suffering and creating the kind of causes that will bring that about. Those are the experiences that we have yet to come into contact with. We are changing, though, our own body, the place where we live, the things we enjoy, moment to moment to moment. And although we might have this sense of, oh, like, well, what I have now, that's going to remain, it's not really the case. If we can come to recognize that these are all perishable phenomena, disintegrating moment to moment, we can reduce some of the kind of clinging towards our abode, our body, our possessions. And when we recognize that, well, temporarily, yes, we need to sustain our body for the purpose of using it for a particular kind of goal, we won't be so attached to it, so much clinging to it, if we recognize that we are all sort of subject to this kind of destruction, subject to impermanence, and we can't cling to things as though they are going to remain forever.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, what do you do sort of? Oh, tennis, that sort of Maumba condition on my own day. Tanda condition or Maumba condition do there. There's somebody go to the jail rally in Yungura. To the jail at any Yungura, mother, asking over to Yashiyomara, someone at Kijinshi Kuyara. Oh, dear Nungarazo, Joshima. Sit down and over Koran. Chilo over the China. Method the China, 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 Karina. Ko Junchi dead. Conjunture method China, ko Tambuchun Shatene, Chambushatene, Pisandra Shayan, Tamniachi, Kechi, Bedegdo. Titana Kochi, Juachi Shingdina, Talandugina, Karadabina Chichi, Conjunture Junchi dead. Without Bada Kechi Jodugara. The Yina Kokanga, Sami Majimisha, what the acid was, Junchi Tesla. Tina Shingarazo, Luyina, Lukoran, Junchi Dodegora. Toma Mevanechi, Junchi Yungi, Pame Pamaya Zita, Garazo Lulea, Chashetilea, Mimbet Bundambuki, Chashet is my teacher Yongdoa. Not other than she, no, Tenica soda. No, summertime just in a shira. In the Kawashima Yabuda to Buyoyako, good and kill to Yora. The Judia Korada Tibe Juji or Mother Jumanic Yomara. As a jumping by Gima, that Sunday on my mother Javali, jumping by Yora. Could you manic your killing Yordo? Nobutambu Chichu says, Titama Titama say Omar, Koralubu to Chichuares, Juyomares, Sigara. Zaganzu. Too many Chunako Kadu Ina Yonsora. Too many Debutini, Judy Mesa Kangalia, Debuti Keshora. Tikio Mara Kashel, Kashel Mekitiko, Judy Yona, you said like a message like Memusum to Tonguangaras. Or the Ducasoda. Choosing Ibaduku Yore. They are too many Kio Mare. Nick Judy are Tagwandabusik, Nambasenador. Judy Tagwandabusik, someone who wants that you get with 6 and a tiggy. The vacation at the end of today, young Mara. So, debuted at Timbe, you did young gang concert. Chedan Latin, con debuted to the younger mother. Shendaji Latin, Lega Chedan Latin, Societ Mahomba, some younger than Yangachambura. Tindaki Mardo, what did Mahomba is Kandayam, my social Kulada. I think the Timbejo. Rala Ralegur, so what did the Rangi Kusum? Shall I saw upon paper to ye? Roa message the avoid should have to be carrying. So said Dele, so give a condition, I guess you want to dressing sugar. Militada in a cashet, dress a cashet, yes, Mamma Sena. They didn't go someone that I needed to do some membership. Some Tawandula Dungame to be Ganjare, some Dushi on the Nevene. So I give a you want to get Cholam get on the Shelia. Nobody did the marriage go Chindel around Tao Yogora. Shella Teve Chulgora. What in the Chen and the Mount Batiles, Tanda Yabu Sheba Debutele and Mount Deo Yongore. Shella never says how I Sheba Debutege. Shella Yoana Shirang Mount Bal and Yongore Segura. What is it, Mount Dasa?
So, here, as far as what will come about in the future and even what we are experiencing now, all of this is dependent upon various causes and conditions. Where we will go in our future life is dependent upon the kinds of causes and conditions that we are creating. And this is because there is a continuity, right? Even though things are impermanent, changing moment to moment, when we look at even external things like a flower, there is a continuity there, right? You plant a seed and then there's a sprout and then there comes to be a flower and that flower lives for some time and then it perishes. But the atoms that comprise that flower, the kinds of material substances that comprise that have a continuity to them. And so too, this body that we have right now has a long continuity, right? We came forth from the sperm and egg of our parents, which in turn came from other parents and other parents and other parents all the way back. And so this collection of atoms, this collection of things that comprise our body, there is a continuity to those. And so too when it comes to our consciousness. So when we think about the fact that all phenomena are dependent, arise due to causes and conditions, they also arise in dependence upon causes that are harmonious, right? It isn't as though a discordant kind of a cause can give rise to a very different result, but rather the result will accord with the cause. And so there were some in ancient India, although there might not be them around today, the hedonists or the Charvakas, who said that we arise from no causes in particular. Everything arises just causelessly. However, if that were the case, then things could arise at any time without any sort of particular cause. They would always be arising, or they could arise in situations where there is no cause. And we can establish through direct perception that that isn't possible, that all phenomena must arise due to a cause, and particularly a kind of harmonious cause. So this is also the case that then negates there being some kind of permanent, omnipotent creator whose acts determine what we experience, right? It is not the case that someone else's actions are the results that we experience, but rather it is our own actions that determine what we will experience. It is our own actions that lead to the results that we have to face. And so we are dependent upon ourselves, right? If we make the efforts to, with our three doors, our body, speech, and mind, refrain from harming others, abandon harming others, we are creating the causes for happiness in future lives and also the happiness in this life right now. The less anger that we have, the less pride, the less jealousy, less hatred and rancor and so forth, this will create more happiness for ourselves in the present, as well as planting the seeds for good in the future. And if we are able to look out and see others as being just like us, as being exactly the same and wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer, we will recognize that those experiences that we inflict upon others, like say if we cause them harm, we ourselves are going to have to experience the results similar to that experience we have created for others. And so in that way, the kinds of taking accountability for our own causality, our own sort of agency, is what will create our happiness in the present as well as good results in the future as well.
Oh, yeah. No, they do Garsora. Then it Kechi con Eurochan Geshe de Ora. Judan came to Eurochan and Madame Debu Madame Gura. So Nambata was in a Kanga Keshi Jigdu Yesigara, Yurandu Gura, Namanashin Tegi Omara. Koliako Marazum Bindation, some Bushate, Kadukat Kuduku. Ganga condition a Koran to stay. Couldn't change its hand table, mother, couldn't get the Matanaco, shield the map Sadura. Then you go Kitchen Master. Kichi go Jidu Geshe in a could join the Degdoa. Nambal penetration to the mount part of Sabasura, that over longer, till on the Nangba Geshe Thabkhe Geshe li chigi tuku le sa drebu nyong chinge yongu mares. Shawa chinge gyu drebu kye tuku mares. Koran kye ni Geshe nibul zotsare ke drebu kari kye yores. Dende kyun chigo yora. Ina ko nangba chene ko Geshe ki yura chiya yosa drebu kye tuku yora. Pena nga zu taten sa lo de yabu duwa pete. Lo de ko Geshe ki chigi tuku yora. Ina nga zu lega che tuku duwa ko peche lo tuku re te che tuku re. Lo te zoe te ko Geshe zo duku yora. Te su tanto to nga zu ha kuya duwa. Geshe nga ma de zo me ne ko lo gong son te duku ma ro peche shi te mo chayra. Lo ni te mo chayra. O tende ko chi zo duku yora. Ina ko gyun de tu de zan lega che tuku duwa. Shawa che tuku yora. Chige chilin dawara che te che ne Geshe re so su lega che de che zan do sha yora. Kun juwan do den rebu de te yong yora. O tende mitaba yinba tege chik de debu kanga chi mudo tinde kyo yo mare tile ja mitaba yinba tege ko kare ina gyurju taya chi wati yungudwa soso mi cheba de cholam de chi ne de samla tan cho ne de kanga juwa tanya chi wara juwa tanya me je takba de chi be ne kondu sawi ne kadi ina kondu sawarang te mi kyobu chi ne kadi ina kyobu chi te tegarang te kura te te maro juwa dugudwa san juwa duya yubita sonza mitaba sonza ko juwa duya yora sangbe chola juwa tana juwa duya yora ngambe chola juwa tana juwa duya duwa tiyo chikshida mitaba yinbiti kukabrishin duwa nga zulya mitaba meba si tambu kari ina tina si te degi ina ni duga di duga rante ya duwa meba shagira o tiyo soso kusum je cholam dila tene soso ge shenla pemba duwa da shenla sawa bamba la tene mawa bala soso sawa chinge nyonga pemba dunga mawa de yungwara judan timban drebushi yungwara o tiyo ko Geshe liya tanda kusum liya soso juwa tana yore esam ti ngara zo ngusum do tukire rakbe chone o nyema nga tinte shiwe te tambu kage lusu machin kage meshin kage yore ta tanda ausi shinge nyema da meda tinte chashasam juwa yode ko ngusum tukudwa le sangbu chene juwa yode le ngemba chene han debu tuwa yoyan tuzo lende chachi di ngusum do tukwe wara ta cha mabu che ko ju te tinte yore mado o de inde soso le ya ne da le da lonjo le so wa changma yuwa dong ke me da bo yin ba samlo ta ni ane soso samlo nyen ba to pa to de ta sangbo yong ye ge ju di sa ye da o tin de chu do ba gu yo da ya ti chi song na ne de chi
Mm. So here, given that phenomena disintegrate moment to moment, they are impermanent. This means, again, that they arise due to various causes. So different causes lead to different results. And it is the case, again, that all things perish or disintegrate moment to moment. And really, when we think about like even our being alive, we remain alive so long as we have the kinds of causes and conditions that support our being alive, right? So there is a kind of debate that emerges among non-Buddhists and Buddhists because some non-Buddhists will look at this kind of assertion by Buddhists and say, well, if something changes moment to moment to moment, well, then how can there be results from various causes? Because that, the cause has disintegrated, has ended, and therefore, how could it bring forth any kind of a result? If things change moment to moment to moment, then this leads to there not being any sort of continuity, there not being a possibility of causes bringing forth their effects. However, Buddhists would say that it is precisely because of this moment to moment change that we can talk about causes bringing forth their results. And so they understand it in a different way. There is continuity, although there is that kind of moment to moment disintegration and perishing. in that things don't remain statically. This is actually what allows for the causes to bring forth results. These days, we can use the kind of example of electricity. This is something where when we turn it on, it seems like it's a one single thing, but there's actually a sort of moment to moment to moment. We are using that electricity, right? We wouldn't be sort of having to pay for it if it were just something that were one singular kind of a thing. But it is, although changing moment to moment, there is a continuity that remains. We can have a light burning and we're able to read and we're able to see and so forth. And so here it is the case that because whatever is impermanent changes, it has the possibility for those causes that are created to bring about results. And really, impermanence opens up the possibility of change. So here, if it were the case that things didn't have this kind of moment to moment nature, then we would just be stuck in how we are. Like if you're really angry, you would always be really angry. Or if you're in a situation where you're impoverished, you would always be impoverished. But it is the case that we have the possibility for change. We can improve ourselves. We can go towards the side of being better. We can also go towards the side of being more negative. But impermanence really means for us opportunity. If we create actions that are more beneficial, if we abandon harming others and do things that are beneficial to others with our body, speech, and mind, then we are creating the kind of causes that lead to results that are good and also allow for the possibility of continuing to benefit others more. We have the possibility of changing our habits, our actions of body, speech, and mind, and we can see this from our own experience. Like maybe before we were quite uninformed or uneducated, but we begin to study and we gain a kind of knowledge and know something, or we understand from our own experience that we can make ourselves less angry, we can reduce our various afflictions. And so thinking how all is impermanent is really a method for ourselves recognizing the possibility of change. And actually, if we make effort at working with our three doors, our body, speech, and mind, we can be confident that we do have the potential to change.
Oh, yeah, that is it. They into Tamidaba, Samutara, Nelly Longilla Soba, Soso, Sumbuche de Soba Kanga, Midaba Samutane. Oh, then it Tatandako, David Rundelia, Maomba, Soso Kari Yomayoti, Judy Soso Tandasaya Indi, oh, Tiliatini, Shella Tsawapa, Modolada Miko, Topchiki Tandalia, Shella Tsawapa, Mikiwa Chupa, Tiendo Sakiwa Chutuya, Yana, Mundu Chutu, Selasoba. 대중을 깨울 줄 알려. 근데 타르바토베체도 창단이도 조금 거도. 신샤치서 지단 내다 류도 lon주 도중간도 초에 된도 구구여라. 초에 된 점도 인삼사 마도지 때다 소소베 제미롱하러 지가되이나 봐. 네와도 때다베 냠도베 자자버지 베 삼사 삼루테다 주모도. 대외 최제 단도 초에 된 점도 내다 류도 lon주를 소바테서 구구여라. 대삼이인삼 마도 때를 시에 전부 봐 신자전에 착과시거라. 지단데 고고도 삼산데 고고로 와들 신자스고 말아. 따좀바이나야. 저거 또나 칼라사고라 칼라사고라. 네 칼라이네 야니시네 고 소소 트베데 데르마 트베데 데르다 트베데 사고를 류탄다 때고를 삼기라. 대삼리야 착과시고 말아. 대대 소소베 먼저 남지 빼쳐도 레다 슈구진들 놈 티번나시 셔스지 자르나시 왜 가간 되면서 그 자데 버리지 그뒤 이내고 어딜래야 신자시고라 착바 그제네 신자 미리 이내다 로주 이내다 소술리 이내다 가갈이야 봐 착바데 매나 나니 삼자 신자 슈침부데 매나 근데 공도도 용 말아 당화도 용 말아 오늘 지지집 내가 지도 지지데 디마서 와서 소순대가 내시고 되는 공도만 뭐 용구라 소순대가 내시 가가도 용해요 말아 근데 그 당화도 용구도 작당하지 이왕에는 레미게 와다 겨마 부사요라 텔레테네니 겨와 상에다 마오발 때와다 동행이 되는 거라 뒤에 내려도 배치도 요모 공도당하게 차도 된심 saba soso jume mila neba jengege samlu risu jubata zo kaza ina nyunyu tanga yora. Pe namsa pangni tachumba juwe mena ko nyuru tanga yeba nga zo hako doa. Tere saba che komba ina samsa nga ran tinte samgewa. 메시딜리케라 소바 콤용에서나 삼루당 그여데 차고도 소바 마부셰요라 무브라 마부 칸나 차세요라 자체 카드카드 소바 콤바세나 때 메베소라 차야냐가도와 근데 어다 소바 공기에삼 근데 제나고 야르 안도라 콘도시라 사야 메게서도 근데 차야 연구도 어디서다 가서르다 니레 차단라 소바 납신 납실라 소바 근데 매네니 소소 신들레 끼브라 라 끼바 라 로버트즈 끼바 라 고양부라시 삼르테와체 전다 매베 소소소소 심르 미기바 송게트즈 시다 매베차라 차도원 전심라서 와트즈 시다 매베차나 소소 리테와 라 텔레테는 레상부사네 마음발레 테와 요에라 소소 멜랭냠바체 미기브스 라 미기브차나데 마음발레 텔레테는 텐데시 용거라 링다부다부 용거라 레세드 오 인디 Nile Tarbato Vesedo, Chada, Kondo Naje, Dressim, Napsin, La Soba, Kanyuche, the Tarbato Vecula do some given the teacher in some Koto Nayaudua, a lecture but the Hakona, Narazunam Juti Kern Sigmara, Chata Sekono, Toguri, Kari Japuni, Jakuri, Sigura, Konto Sekona, Mama Konto Segura, see the Ise, I think remember Sekura, Kasura. 어디네 차단 빠네 차단 교환게 네 레사에 매버 차서나 다르와 도교하라 풍부랑 매발랑고 같은 거 말아 진짜 지시고요 삼 대안에 라지고 많이 봐 라가 천디 밤에 준비 심지어 참아 교와 장매봐 삼르다나 교와가 만나서 펜도 쉐버데 펜도 쉐버 로고라 단다 마트레마 마도 템버를 지연에 교와가 마들 펜동에 시부지 단던 것이나 가부 연구라들이야. 다다는 가지고 마셔서 그 뒤여봐라. 단단코 펜터고 시지라. 근데 바다마다 니단이 둘러서 봐. 간데지 균나 균의 펜도싱기 시지 인상 기지표베티 ngo신기 오마레 삼사리. 만달래고 심전을 떠디나. 대야고 말해서 대야고에서 예어를 시시 따다면 버치. 대환들을 동해면도 바래 삼사라나 신배 소아티고네 따고 있어도 네 심지어 탐제야 라한단 저명게 로 어진데 시에메 첸디 파만연들라 소바나시 심지어 현당자 대다된 저여바예시 대다들 대인데 심지어 탐제려야 팬도 줍통게 심지어 탐제려야 되네 가서라 동해래 내급게 동해다 탑도기 대화람 그 통게 근데 제 통계기 가사진 줄아셔서 교육고시 연대군데 랑돌게 내탐지 신게 딘데기 가사실은 주아쇼섬 야 산제지 고반토가 쇼세 던다테라 딘데지 니바던 주아쇼서 마음발 여ring보 삼로다 갈래 망보 잡게 삼사리 타르 제게는 겨울랍지사거라 뒤 던달이야니 되네 가서라 추에 단당가서 우머렌지 정월이야 töbaşe, mıdıdan ile töbe külüye töbaşe, disosu samlıta ona şeyini yani yandı komne. Nyamsulangi insam teçe du çöyengi insam kunu setamle sen başıyoruz. O diyor.
So here, therefore, recognizing the kind of impermanence of our body, our possessions, our abode, and really thinking about, at first, for the sake of having a good rebirth in the future, that abandoning those kinds of causes, like the 10 non-virtues that cause harm for others, and engaging in their opposites, the 10 virtues, or we could talk about engaging in the 16 dharmas for higher rebirth, that through that kind of practice, one can ensure that you have something good in the future based upon reflecting upon impermanence and the kind of causality. But then recognizing that in order to gain liberation, to really get out of this cycle of taking birth under the control of karma and the afflictions, one needs to get rid of attachment and hatred. Now, we need things like our body, our abode, but if we recognize that they are things that are impermanent, that we shouldn't cling to so strongly, that we should recognize we are going to part with them, we are going to have to leave them behind, then we won't have such a strong clinging to them. We will be able to excuse me, say take take care of our body without that sense of strong attachment or clinging. Like, for example, arhats, if they're hungry, they need to eat, right? But they don't do it out of a kind of attachment, a kind of clinging to things, but rather out of recognizing the utility of this body and taking care of it for the purpose of being able to work for liberation. So here, if we have attachment, it's kind of the way it's described in various texts is like you've put oil onto paper or oil onto cloth where it just like seeps in, and it's something that is so difficult to remove. And so if we are able to recognize the defects of particularly our attachment and our kind of clinging to things that comes forth from this strong clinging to I, the sense of I that then gives rise to a sense of attachment towards my body, mine, and the kind of hatred towards others. If we get rid of that, then we will no longer have that kind of attachment and hatred that propels us to take rebirth due to creating various karmas. So as long as we have those kinds of afflictions, so long will we be taking rebirth due to the force of those afflictions and the karmas that we create. And so here we need to really make an effort to reduce those afflictions as much as we can. This isn't something that is instantaneous, but rather it involves a sustained kind of a practice. Like often we talk a lot about patience, right? We give all kinds of discussions and explanations of what patience is, but really we need to practice patience in those moments where things are difficult, where we are facing some kind of a challenge. And that's the way in which we actually improve it. It's not just through talking about it. And as much as we reduce our afflictions, as much as we get rid of our competitiveness and our jealousy, our anger, our pride, and kind of attitude of covetousness and malice and so forth, we will be happier and those around us will be happier. If we get rid of that kind of jealousy and competitiveness, then we will not experience the kinds of sufferings that creates, both in the short term and in the long term, in terms of the results that will be the ripening results of that. And so if we get rid of these afflictions, then we don't have to sort of face them again and again. In terms of by creating them, indulging in our afflictions as causes is going to lead to the result of unhappiness, but also having those afflictions again and again in terms of the kinds of habits that we are creating. And so this begins by seeing these as faults, right? Sometimes we don't recognize our afflictions as being faulty. Like we think that our anger is somehow protecting us when someone gets angry or does something to harm us, or we think that our attachment is kind of a good thing. But we need to be able to recognize the faults of those afflictions in order to then be able to get rid of them. And so making that kind of effort to eliminate, to reduce and eventually eliminate our afflictions, then we will be able to attain that state of liberation. But just to gain that state of liberation for ourselves alone is really not sufficient. It's not just me that's in this kind of situation of samsara, but really all of these other sentient beings who have benefited me in past lives, who have acted toward me with great kindness as my mothers and fathers and so forth. Other than not recognizing them due to our having changed lives and sort of switched around, we have been connected with all other sentient beings. And so therefore we shouldn't distinguish between like, oh, this is my enemy, this is my friend, but rather recognize that all sentient beings have shown us great kindness, and all sentient beings are the same in wanting happiness and not wanting to suffer. So we shouldn't view them as like unconnected from us, but rather wishing to be able to benefit all sentient beings in a kind of temporary sense of bringing about their temporary happiness, as well as in their being able to be brought to the highest ultimate happiness of Buddhahood. We should think, I want to become a being who has eliminated all faults, who has developed all good qualities, who has complete knowledge of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned in order to be able to lead all of these sentient beings out of their suffering. And this is something that means we need to take a kind of long-term view. It's not going to happen right now, immediately, but by planting the seeds for that, we will eventually be able to become a Buddha and benefit all sentient sentient beings in that way. And so for that purpose, we should think that, well, I'm listening to this Dharma of the precious Garland by Nagarjuna that teaches the various causes for higher rebirths in the state of definite goodness. And by listening to this, I'm then going to contemplate it, put it into practice, meditate on it in order that I might become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So we should set such a motivation for listening to the teachings.
Oh, yeah. That Kimbala sobe, yende soso yung mo se chito so. That did it, niba timba. Oh, Kadashina. Kimbala sobe yende tuti temba tindo sashira. Ta soso ngongo songa se tito. Kimbala sobe soso ngongo songa se. Oh, did it, did it, that I soloka. Sumsu sotu tinsara. Sum sotu. Chimba, Simba, Toya Yabura, mi yoku. Chimba rande yon tong wa se to. Chimba de zao dimba. Chimba rande yon tong wa rando rinjira, rande ma rando. Chimba rando yon tong wa se. Soso ki nor, soso la wa yu nor chala la soba tinde karina. Pensho tinde shantalia tonga tere se ora. Chimba tonga. Shimba rangno yung tongwa, chitim shenpen chawo, chitim sede shen la tsawa pang, shen la naba pang ko shen tawa yung e tanda tsawa pang e terwa, shenpen ki chawa. Soba tawa pang ba te sa, soba sede ko soso nawa mandunge, soso kasa da tusa da tinte chik lega chitang chi mandini, ni ko kondu sakyo ra, o tili atene. Soba toa pangpa, kondu pangpa te. Soba kumye tere tatera. Soba toa pangpa wase. Soso semlen droa, nawa droa, dama droa tosto yungra. Tsangpa soso dava nashin tukumara. O tinte chunga yinay, nuji la chima nyabe soba sayara. Kuran tinte samgiri kame samsa. Shashana tawarwa. Tunga tangla je soba, soso tosu nevara chunga yinay, digiri kayo mara sam. Kultuwa, sotuwa sayara. Ni cholangi pasi besoba sayara. Watindi mamu yora, teta se. Chitim shenpe cha oche, soba toa pangpa de. Chindui kela toa oche. Chindui sayade ko kewala toa ase. Oh, tatiri. Pati ma logo ina mena, trabachi lo na dira. Oh, ta chimba ni rangi nor shenla yonso tongwe. Semba tangse. Soso wangwe chala de shenla pendok chido oti nge kola. Chingi yinsa, pyugi yinsa bena. Ni tongwe semba terwa, tambu semba te kuyora, tong sem se terwa. Ni tongwe semba le tena wati kerang yinsa kani lamnenda, ya si lakwe ya kuchi pa, tewe ni lunga ki chawa tuzu chimba chingi wara. O tuzu sikre sera. Chimba yonso tongwe semba tang te kune, langbe lunga ki leso, o tila chimbe le se wara, chimba. Chudim ni shenla pembar jawe chedo, rangi bashi chondo niwa pangba was. O shenlia tsawa pangba shitiro, sosu changyang chondo samgutani shenla tsawa da karina, che peba tinte mayimba che. O shenla pembar jawe chedo. Soba de karesa, soba ne towa pangba des. Kondo masav che, sotuba che rawa. Chola nyebar semba sosos, soba de sum. Nijila chimi nyeba soba. Dunga tangani ki soba. Chola nyebar semba sobas. Choji samlutani ko. Tanyi tatundi samlutani soba kume yora. Chundu ni kiawala toa nido ose. Chundu sede kiawala toa tese. Kiwe chawala judu sa kabhito ne juwe tese. Odi kechimbude toa. Chunga kela toa ose. Ngarazu kiawa tuba ina. Kabhito ne keba sambu yin sam. Samba sambu chigi wara. Yabura te. Chambata tsawata nyingshida tinte samlutangi wara. Tinte tandal che nyangi samna kabu chi nyane kakuwa che redi wara. Yako. 준비시 정강 결라 좋아와서 담분년도 가베토는 얘기가 상분이서 지만지도 야부 조사 들은 야부 년도 소함 다치니기 삼로 땅고래 서바 공부를 쉬나 쉬바나 시간도 제고래 삼 근데 전에는 겨울업 심부사기라 그래서 정강 결라 좋아와서 어디래 겨와 저도 당부 그 쪼에토네 샤드전 쪼에토네 샤고 승구도 뒤면에 깔레르 가지 가 어따들 깔레 가서 삼나 일지만에 그 겨와 쪼를 쪼매기 샤라 삼den게 두주tin데 샤용도 다야 대고래서 초수지스 공자 대고래서 심바 쪼매기 대변에 아니지만 수수 때서 공자사기 통해서나 미기부 차그리시도 다야 대고래 점마시삼 초진에 지추지긴도 너지 초진에 뭐 가오매비시 다야 걸려서 너된 적이 오마라 오 그걸레서다 저 방바대에서 쉐라니 버리세 버소소스 준비네 게 자와라 또와 니도서 되실라나 된데서
Mm.
자와단 되바치 되실라네 되래 가는
Mm. So then, picking up in the text, we're at this second point, which is identifying individually the entities of good qualities of each of the six perfections and compassion. And so, beginning with verse 436, it reads, "To be generous is to give up one's wealth. To have ethical conduct is to endeavor to help others. Fortitude is the abandonment of anger. Joyous effort is enthusiasm for virtue." So here, when it comes to generosity, this is to give up those things that you own. There are various types of generosity, but this includes being able to part with things that you possess, give them away to others, your wealth, your possessions, and so forth. And then the second line reads, "To have ethical conduct is to endeavor to help others." So, really, ethical conduct involves giving up harming other sentient beings, really doing whatever is beneficial for others. And then fortitude is the abandonment of anger. So here, things are going to appear to us in different ways. Sometimes it appears according to our wishes. Sometimes things don't go in accordance with what we might want or what we see as being pleasant or right. But in those kinds of situations, we need to have the fortitude to be able to bear with whatever comes our way. When we experience suffering, we should have a kind of this kind of fortitude that is thinking nothing of that suffering, being able to endure that without really being overcome by it. So here, then joyous effort is enthusiasm for virtue. And so looking to the commentary to this, just giving a little bit of a review, whatever it is that you possess, you own, whatever kind of wealth you have, really generosity is first the thought of being able to part with those things, to be able to give them up to others. And then it is followed through by when you actually verbally say to someone, oh, you can have this, or give that thing with your body. So it is that thought then followed by actions of speech and body. And so here then the practice of ethical conduct is really to give up just striving for your own aims, to really engage in activities that are beneficial to others, and to get rid of anything that is harmful to other sentient beings. As it says, ethical conduct is to endeavor to help others, and that also involves giving up any sort of harm towards them. And then there is fortitude. We have these three different kinds of fortitude, not thinking anything in the face of suffering, not reacting or retaliating to when others are angry, and also in the face of studying the Dharma. When we are thinking about the Dharma or complex topics to have that kind of fortitude in pursuing our knowledge there. And then we have joyous effort, which is really to do with joy, to do virtuous actions with joy. And so we should think, like, what a fortunate opportunity it is. If we listen to the Dharma, we should really have a thought of like how fortunate it is that I'm able to listen to the Dharma, that I'm able to think about this Dharma. And when we accomplish some sort of action, we should rejoice in it as well. And in that way, we really accomplish great waves, a great kind of virtue. But if we have this thought of like, oh, this is so difficult, this is so hard, I have to sit here and do this, like we sometimes have that in the context of a retreat. Someone will try to do a retreat, but they are not really joyous in doing it. They don't have a kind of interest or a joy. And so maybe they say, okay, I'm going to sit down and meditate for an hour. But they're really unhappy throughout that, such that when they get up and they even look at where they're going to sit and meditate again, they just have this feeling of revulsion. Like, I don't want to go back and do this. And so you might end up engaging in the meditation. You force yourself to sit down and do it, but you're not really doing it with joyous effort. We should engage in virtues with a kind of desire to undertake them, a feeling of joy in being able to have that opportunity. Oh, yeah, again.
뭐야, 뭐래. 어제도 야 뒤지시네 뭐래. 저 짐바 주제 쇠바 선부터 빼 전부래도 안 알아줄 어야. 진소 추숨 대다시도 페모시 대월시 백kim바 남을 지단고 짐발라 소바트서 소 kim바 벤저 그 누구 생각에 시도 내가 생각해서 저서 쏘시는 송구도 이나 그 랍도 좋아 이나 들 쩐쩐 고여라 저고 매백하지 마라 지소 추숨 대다 페모시 대월시 백kim바 남을 수남 세제 소자 대다 니스도 산제 수기 당이 꾸이 주스 수남지 소대다 망차되는 뒤로도 이 시기 소다 수남지 소니 요라 이 시기 소대다 시럽다 그 동반이라 소범이다 벌 소보고 시럽기 차디라 단다데 상부 차디레도 짐바 주르셔바 소보데 자 딜량아주 가서래 우마든지 태어나려 최지 람보치스다 람가 첨부스 람보체를 먹고 있으면 진짜 다려 마무도도 가서래 이그 시스템 심바들의 마무리 방하죠 상승기 심바스 남녀가지고 망쳐 상승기 심바들 심바장냐 거대라 변조다 된데 강의로 오셔야 돼 뒤장자려면도 상승기 심바스 최지 심바스 랍셔야 돼 심바장도 거라 밀려야지 삼일단단 럽게와라 삼일단단 말이 tinder라고 tinder 마시 대치시데 일단 제 심배장도 거라 럽셔 챙겨와라 삼일단단 럽게와라 걸자 게 럽게네 심배장도 거라 게 럽게와라 거 챙겨와라 가시 상세지 심바시 최지 심바시 민식배 심바시 강에 여거라 지네 쉬우지 강에 여나 그저로가 지네 강에 세워대 대 심배장도도 짐바 자신부래도 최지 상세 짐바 최지 짐바 민지배 짐바스 매일 로봇에 삼아 짐배 잘도도 망사 강에 여기서 소리야 어디인데 짐바디 뜻이라 수dim 때에 망보용도 단단 아주 지단 수dim시 매기 조봉을 주든 기부 총원되지니 매기 조봉을 주리라 알레 어디지 람나 땅마트야
So here, these three, as we saw from other verses here in the precious Garland, these three of generosity, ethical conduct, and fortitude are mainly taught to householders. This is really proclaimed in particular to householders. And by doing these practices, one accumulates a great collection of virtue, of merit, which in turn leads to the form body of a Buddha. So we have these two accumulations, the accumulation of merit that is primarily accomplished through these three, generosity, ethical conduct, and fortitude. And then we have the collection of wisdom that comes about through really thinking about emptiness and the kind of using our intelligence and discrimination, that wisdom, in order to be able to primarily lead to the result of the Dharmakaya. But here, this great path involves involves both of these, right? So here, even if one is ordained, it is important to engage in these three, although it is particularly recommended for householders because, for example, they possess wealth, they possess things that, and kind of accumulate possessions in a way that those who are ordained do not. But generosity is not just material generosity. We can talk about many different kinds of generosity. There is the material generosity of giving possessions and wealth to others who are in need, but there's also the generosity of the Dharma, giving advice to others to help them, to benefit them, giving them advice that helps them to change their behavior and to bring about their happiness, teaching them in some way or giving them advice is also a form of generosity. And we can have the kind of generosity of giving freedom from fear. Those who are in difficult circumstances, giving them some sort of relief, providing them with protection, helping them out of whatever situation they are in that is difficult, that too is a form of generosity. So when we think about generosity really helping any other being who is in need, we can say is a type of generosity. So this is a very vast practice. We shouldn't just think of it as being giving material things. And then we'll move to ethical conduct.
야, 전에 추점해야 될 지당 아주 개인들이 개인 거라서 숨제 친구라. 개인 방망이로 소용구라. 때나시 기주인의 랍중인의 랍중 기주의 숨제 추점 연구래. 경로인의 경로 숨제 추점 연구래. 디나시 그 현달의 용적으라. 남유가 좀 미기와 주바 개와 주투에도 낭바상마게 지단의 방고에 추점이 시작도 미기 조금 추점 해야지. 뒤에 가서 단단 뒤에 값을 추점될래 대점지 조금에도 계속 전주선부터 저게 전주선배 동발란도서 안에 들어간 추점 시작되고도 니시 동배 추점시 소소서 가르가르 그 가르가르 방기네 티방기 스케일 한번 시 동미한테 니시 동배 추리라 근데 개와 추도지 심지어 되지 추점시 심지어리야 돈다 소소 펜바 두고야 고급 가르쳐나 대 저기 있어 전주 선배는 죽tumlan도서 전주 선배 동발란데 티켈레고도 티 동바되고도 심지어 되지 추점시 심지어리야 펜도고 돈다 가르치고나 티 상마랑 시기시 고급 가르쳐 충분히 되지더라 니시 동배 추점 되지다 가가셔라 심지어 되지 추점시 맞아요. 상세기 짐바 말말 전화가 진다 추dim셔야 되라 니시 동배 추dim셔 개와 추도지 추들이 개와 이제 정말 주에 그 팀래도 개회 자와 컨디션한 거 지금 있어 그 급도 제토에 강의 받을 지금 있어 kel랑도 그래서 개와 추도지 추dim셔 심지어 된지기 추dim셔 추dim 빼자 전부 저기도 어디질라네요.
So then we have ethical conduct, and there are ethical sort of precepts that are taken up when one, say, takes householder vows of when one takes as a male or a female householder. There are certain vows that you are committing to, precepts that you are going to uphold when you take those, and so too for taking the kind of vows of ordination, whether it is a novice or fully ordained monk or none, there are certain codes of conduct, one could say ethical conduct, that you are committing to by taking those vows. Now, as a common kind of ethical conduct, we can say that all Buddhists abandon the 10 non-virtues and engage in the 10 virtues. That is the sort of most basic level of ethical conduct. But here, one is going beyond that because we are talking about children of the victors, these bodhisattvas, who are really not just refraining from harm, which they have these three types of ethical conduct of restraint from harm, working for the benefit of others, and accumulating virtuous deeds or gathering virtues. So not only do they refrain from harming others in terms of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, but also try to help accomplish the aims of others. This comes with taking the bodhisattva vow that you are committed to trying to benefit others others in whatever way you can. And so too, there is this kind of ethical conduct of accumulating, gathering all virtues, whatever accords with the situation, whatever positive action you are able to do, you are committed to doing that kind of action. And so here we should think of ethical conduct as well as being a very vast, a very kind of extensive practice.
Yeah. 다들 전주 선바서 이나 나라 소리나 그 심지에 돈다지 팬도시에라 수수 제투지디 가리네 제고라 고급 조소나 팬도시에 고급 조섬 제고요라 요 심지에 던지 수데세 맞으래 이제 담배스데 개와 치도 있으면 따라 개와 건데시나 어디 내가 개와 대상 신뱅 자와데 야분도 섬사니 티 강거 수수 제투에도 제고요라 그 전주 선바가 되는 아주 제목을 그 시가 말아 냠술 렘바스 티네신 잡은다고 말아서 가투지디 제고요라 근데 진짜 주름제 아니 쇠바들래 쇠바숨도가 쇠바숨 너질래 치면냐베 쇠바스 내가 제게 되고 내가 깨나 다이슈 다케요 말고 고라치 주사카메 삼사르치 가르상다나 콘도마션이 오라 치면냐베 쇠바스 게 마사비자 유샤나메 당산다라 디삼르당도 오고 텐데셔서 텐데셔티 만디라 테데디 삼다나 니 앞에 두라 거도 너질래 치면냐베 쇠바 동해 당랭이 쇠바 소소 정도 또스라 요네 디그레 콜페토는 디그레 삼네 겨와차서 나한테 뭐 알려주지 디마서야 되고서더라 요즘에 동해당에서 출랑에 와서 배워봤을 때 서버때 같이 보려도 어디인데 어디 손부대 빼게 전부대도 네 가서 그래서 강화돼 진짜 진바 주된 손부대라 지소 주순대다 배모시 때어르시 백기만남 수남 시제 소제 대단히 수남 제 소대다 되는 데도도 수남 시제 소대 산제 수기 당이 꾸이 교수 딱걸로 야고가 세변에 산제의 수구토베 교대 쳐도 산제의 신간 표승 사과 내 표승 사과 선내 신간 표승 사과 류 표승 사과 천사의 배제되면 주의시라 저주 강가의 수구 구수계 연대 삼아 현달 바치었다네 천사 무슨 주선 배제삼 배제 때문에 소와 계속 굴려두고도 자꾸 산제 수기 당이 꾸이 수구 산제에서 내 딱배 신금 내 표승 사과라 아니 류 표승 사과 천사의 배제삼 볼에서 버텨봐 구수되라 롱제 표승 사과서 신금을 사과 표승 사과라 띵하나줄에 다가래도 소소 류 표승 사과 껴 상부진 내고는 딜랭고도 롱제 표승 사과 고기나 대희용고도 내 표승 사과 류 표승 롱제 표승 사과 안조에 밀리 먼저 하다 미 고반 표승 사과 내다 류다 롱제 강가 표승 사과 야부시게 고네 대승부터 빼게 쳐버려도 자주고 셈다한테 선바상부 셈베네 산제예니 수고 신금 주시다라 꿀리기 채사 무슨 집에서 상부 깨주 잡은 주시다 숨상배 양라 소바트 좀 주시다 구순 구다 숨기 연대 상마데 네 벤조로 신금라 소바트 강가 대쪽부터 자티고 나라줄에 계신부대도 어디지라나
So then here we have next is fortitude. And here we're often talking in the context of, oh, this is a practice of bodhisattvas. But we too should take advantage of all kind of situations in which we are able to, say, work for the benefit of others. Like here in the context of ethical conduct and these three types of ethical conduct, we shouldn't see that this is, oh, that's just for bodhisattvas, but rather we should think that this is something that applies to us as well, that we should take advantage of every situation where we can work for the benefit of others. And we should try to practice accumulating every kind of virtue that we can, doing whatever positive action we have the ability to do. And so then we move to fortitude. And here, fortitude or patience is of three types. There is the kind of fortitude of not thinking anything in the face of harm. Like when someone does us harm, we just set it aside, or indifferent to it, rather than getting into that kind of thinking of like, well, why did they do this to me? And what were they thinking? And what's wrong with that other person? To be able to let that go, to not think anything in the face of harm is a very important kind of fortitude for us. And so too, the kind of fortitude to bear with situations of suffering, wherein maybe we have to take a little bit of a hit, we have to take a little bit of a loss, but instead of thinking like, well, why me? Why is this happening to me? To be able to bear with that, to be able to have fortitude in the face of those experiences of suffering is the kind of second type of patience or fortitude. And then there is that which relates to studying the Dharma. When we engage in the study and practice of Dharma, to be able to have fortitude and really push through with that is an important component as well. And so here, when it comes to, in this verse, again, where it talks about these three, generosity, ethical conduct, and fortitude, as being particularly praised for householders, and they add up to the accumulation of the causes that leads to the form body of a Buddha, including the kind of excellent abode, the pure realm within which a Buddha abides, as well as the kind of pure possessions and so forth, that pure body, abode, and possessions, this body complete with all of the various major 32 major marks and 80 minor signs and so forth, the kind of pure land, that excellent abode, and the sort of pure possessions that one enjoys. And this is something that, again, is in relation to Buddhahood, when one becomes a fully enlightened Buddha and attains the form body of a Buddha. But this is also applicable even if we are just looking for something kind of excellent within samsara. If we are looking for an excellent body, if we are looking for having good possessions and a good abode, an excellent abode, then this is something that we should engage in the practice of. So when it comes to bodhisattvas, this is something that they do. They engage in generosity, ethical conduct, and fortitude with those causes going toward the form body of a Buddha. But so too, we should practice likewise, in turn reaping the results even within this sort of samsara.
Oh yeah. That really didn't so but the Geshe Yeshe Thabkhe. They nga jo ka sara. Chibata de shala pendo se de chibata gora. And so ba ko chida chitim de shala chapa se do. Chitim song gora. Shala neba bambata shala pemba to any thing good. Tini yong ya so ba kong gure sera. So ba de magum de tini yong mare se. Shala pendo chigmarwa. Chibata wala so shala pemba to maro kondo sasa de la. 아니 사방사들에 샬라 콘도 사기네 사방그 말와 사와치에 탑시치라 등이 람도 롱고나세 등이 원에지 냠술랑 고요나 쉐팅이 람도 드라시시라 원에지 야고 공고이나 다 서바케 치슈데시라 서바 마곰네 등이 요요 말이스 서바 곰나네 대사모 요토고요라 제가 뱀베스 서바데 베케스보다 남경간조 콘도도 마부 요해시라 고또 어쩐지 만지다 콘도 사초져요라 대마데데 또 주는 남사 콘도 사초져지 때도 아니 미치 남주 제시베네 때 나오면도 스통고도 고티야 부심도 삼사세 콘도 사티인데 서바페 계시무래도 어디 손부도 빼 계시무도 삼사 남경한주 초에나를 망쳐 용셔도 때 용거라 어디 주소나 엔데도 자
So here, fortitude is particularly important here. Although we might try to engage in generosity, like giving to others, and ethical conduct of trying to refrain from harming and benefiting others, really without fortitude, the practice of these will not come about. If we really want for those practices to become a path to really lead toward the collection of merit, then we need to have this kind of practice of fortitude. Without that, we will not be able to successfully engage in generosity or really ethical conduct. I mean, we're really beings who are on the verge of getting angry all of the time, right? We see something that we don't think is right, or something that upsets us, or something that we think is harmful to us, and we're really ready to get angry right away. And that kind of destroys any sort of positive accumulations that we would make. And so we should just emphasize that fortitude is a particularly, especially important kind of practice to really make the other practices of generosity and ethical conduct be successful, bring forth results.
뭐야, 다 진주들이라. 진주 결례 좋아하니, 정가 결례 좋아하시. 다 교회 자와 가르치면 뒤 가부터네 제고도 와. 뒤 가부터네 제배에는 뭐 벌어 그 추천도 연구라. 교회 자와를 야부를 가부터 좀 좋아하다 전에 고갑 야부 총수 삼체. 뒤전에 뭐 벌어 전에 페르도라. 이제 교화지 봐. 교화지기는 소소 교화지 놀라 만들어 더 리서치. 시작하고 맹세시에는 교화지 여러 텐데 지메라. 어배 야부 총수사 고갑 총수사 콜페토 소사. 고강의 리터치 도수섬 가르켜와 가르이네. cam도 야부 도수섬 진바치를 수업을 삼대 되니 cam도 쳐야 돼, 차쳐야 돼, 로조 쳐야 돼. 강에 자와 가르쳐네. 야부 총수사 가와 공고도 그 가베톤이 제거돼 계신 거리셔. 어디서 야 딘데서.
And then we have joyous effort, which is enthusiasm for virtue. So whatever virtuous action that we undertake, we should do so joyfully, right? Really looking at it as being a fortunate opportunity. We should think how auspicious, what a great opportunity I had in doing this virtuous action. If instead we sort of are thinking like, okay, yeah, whatever, I did something virtuous, or we don't really have a sense of joy in that, then it's not going to be particularly beneficial. We should undertake positive actions with a sense of enthusiasm, with a sense of joy in that. If we do, say, have a really good sense of refuge, we should rejoice in that. If we do prostrations, we should rejoice in that. If we engage in generosity or study or any of these other actions, we should undertake them with a kind of joy and really rejoice in them after as well.
뭐야, 다들이다 가서. someday someday 로직 너무 매수도 싫었던데 내가 뵙사 어느 거래 민지 심제 탐제라 민지 로직 로트소사 다들 뭐 제반님도 로션도 맞아 someday 띵지 공예들어 개월에 세식 뭐 친구다 제외 로녀에 너무 매배 씹어줄 수 있어라 someday 지직 너무 매세다 이 가리네 공제 유들의 지식도 친구들에서 받아서 교세는 봐 근데 중에서 싫었던데 달람배 싫었대 템바게 달람배 유네 중문에 템바트 뭐네 주도 템바트 가리나 뒤달람배 또 요라 싫었대게 싫었던데 달람배 근데 인지도 와 인지 심지어 탐져라 인지 로지 로드스 인지도 가르도서나 싫어게 뭐래들 someday 겨울 제주도 친구다 대외 로녀와 너무 매배시버실 수 그래서라 싫으면 템바니다 템바 싫어서 같은 때는 배받을 수 그래서 네네 다 대체배 싫어 시전에 중문에도 가리 받을 때는 배받을 싫어부터 제도로 왜 내수 가리 힘이 딱 제시죠 네 인지 친구 심지어 탐져라 민의 동해다 전대지 인지 현대의 로직 벌로서 다 인지도 심지어 탐져를 민이야 현지 동해다 전대지 타치도 현 동해다 전대지 저와들 세계에서도 Chimbe lonje timbi tesa de manim lotion. Yeah, all what is lotion here.
No, no, no. So then turning to meditative stability, coming in verse 437. So this verse reads, meditative stability is unafflictive one-pointedness. Wisdom is definitely determining the truth's meaning. Compassion is a state of mind that savors only loving kindness for all sentient beings. So here, meditative stability or meditative concentration is this kind of mind that is single-pointedly focused on virtue without the afflictions, without the sort of flavor of the afflictions of dullness or excitement that disturb that kind of meditative stabilization. And then wisdom is this definitely determining the truth's meaning, really coming to an actual understanding of the way that things are, examining the nature of knowable objects and coming to a determination as to how they actually exist, how they are the reality of those various truths. And then here, compassion, great compassion in particular, observes all sentient beings and has this kind of singular flavor of wanting to benefit all other sentient beings, wishing that they might be freed from their suffering. So that's the kind of attitude of compassion. This, again, a state of mind that savors only loving kindness or wanting to benefit all of these sentient beings and wishing that they be free from suffering.
Oh, yeah, that's so soon Debu said, the dollar been Debu to show to somebody said. So soon Debu said to the show. I got it to the Chimbe longe said, that Chimbaton le tene, and then Joe Chimati, Debu Kari and Grisina, round of longe chamber young Grisera. Tanda rang longe the Shanlet and the Shanpendo Chambashunde, the Debu de la Mama by the social longe chamber young Grisera. Chimbe longe said. Timji te shen la cawa pang shen tewe she tu shen la cawa pang pa sonza mawa pa ya so kewa de tewe tenzo kewa lingre se. Kewa ngenpa tunge mambu nyong kuya mambu she tewa mambu nyong yube, kukab yube ne tenzo kewa lingre se ra. Timji te she chutim songa le tene tenzo kewa yuba, kiriba. Sebe dang de se, seba kongpa le tene trebu kari yungu se ne min dang de denpa, ra. Down the temple, Pata to Indo Kabo, Yitu no Drobo, yeah, what in the Sube down there, Sube sees it. Tundritan, Kalia, Toa Shukchambo, you get a Miss Siji Chambo, Siji Chambo. Someday she says, someday Combalatene, and then the Gosoda, Chiwada, Goba, Samba Casacali, some Casacali Camdo. Samletang runga dambi runga kasakal do te ate gogare te ora. Ani hakasha semmu che te de chagre se ora. Te me chagre se. Samden ki shi se. Chiwa da gobala so ba te shi ne semtembo re che tumbo che te tung chagre ora. Samden ki shi lo yu tre se. Shirab te chamba che ne shi che ne ju ne de kare ba. Only trying to talk and just somebody nation, something. My wrong, even a shimone, your mother, some time. She's on the wrong, never she's on any thing you must say that. Since I should shoot a dura, or nation that is a bit. Mitawa Yima in some time. Karina, she's a nature one at the shins on a cigar. And Lloyd, she be among bullet train to make a dura. To make a young at some time, Madrid to make you go. Samletanda Madrine, Lunga, Chevan Note, and Tungayungora. What is Samletanda Tata? Join any to young Madison. Some days you lawyer tells her. You do anything good to say. You do combatant and it's also the round that she some may. Then that Tarsim to this or I tell it and it change you some get over there. Tell it and the Sanje Yokomaton that you like. Sanje Yokomaton is some around the Shank to Tarsim Batutura. Oh, Judas. Don't ever the long end, Malonia. 신변 대부 농주 당서 수dim기니 된주 대화 당서라 수변 당당 된버서 준주기 교회 수지 신부서 삼대기 진구라서 원념매매 시와다 로에서 시럽디스라 로세데 시럽시와 시럽디 시발에 줘라 제바오서 닝지와네 랑생기 등근도 보오서 어디부터 지교네요.
Mm. So then next we turn to an explanation of the individual results of each of these practices. So first it says, from generosity comes wealth. So by giving to others, by bringing about that kind of beneficial experience to others, we in turn create the causes for us to experience that sort of benefit ourselves. It comes back to you. You will have the conditions in the future to have enough to be able to continue to engage in generosity and so forth. And so from generosity comes wealth. And then from happiness from ethical conduct. In particular, when we don't harm others, when we engage in ethical conduct, we secure for ourselves a happier kind of migration. By benefiting others and not causing them harm, we in turn create the causes for us to experience benefit and less harm from others. And so then from fortitude comes beauty. By having that kind of practice of fortitude, one gains a birth in which you are attractive, pleasant to others, and splendor from joyous effort. From engaging with joyous effort, we experience the ripening result of a kind of splendor. And through meditation, through the practice of meditative concentration or stabilization, one is peaceful. You attain a state that is free, pacified from. I mean, normally our minds kind of go all over the place. We have this sort of excitement that causes our minds to get distracted to all kinds of objects that we feel attached to. Or we might have a kind of dullness where the mind is really sort of dark and diluted. And here, meditative concentration eliminates those kinds of faults such that we have the ability to stay single-pointedly focused. We have that kind of peacefulness that is free of those various afflictions. And then through wisdom comes liberation. So by coming to understand reality as it is, by coming to get rid of, I mean, normally we perceive that there's this I that appears to us as though it's like autonomous, independent, existent from its own side. And really all of our suffering comes from that, comes from that kind of improper thinking. And so if we are able to eliminate that, we get rid of that kind of misperception by coming to understand things as they are, then that wisdom causes liberation from samsara. And then through compassion is what accomplishes all aims. So it is from this attitude of compassion that we are able to bring our own and others' aims to their completion. We can ourselves eliminate all of our faults and thereby lead others to that state in which they experience that highest kind of happiness. So all happiness for ourselves and others really, or our aims and others' aims, is accomplished through the practice of compassion.
뭐야? 다 시바 투무진 되버시기도 바로 드침바 주체 닝지체 되는 중송아 등부대 투무인 되버시 또 소소소 되부터 시사라 투무 되버 가리용 그랬티시기도 어디 가르서 등분대다 말로 바르세 바르지 주체 아니 닝지체 아 등부대다 말로 바르 진짜 바로 침바 예세 대 청마게 되부들 대들을 놓기나 아니 시럽지 바로도 치네 산계지 고반토에 줄도 그래서 와라 아니 거래 이시 삼계 메캬비 유세 삼계 메캬비 유 산계지 고마 산계지 실어서 버텨서도 그래 지된 거뭐 니톱 교수 지된 심제 탐재경 건데 겹치 통배게 산계지 고반토에 줄도 그래서 다 제바디 말로셔네 되면 연대 tembute다 말로 직접 로블람지 내가서 단다 상마제베서 로베 팀부들로 로베 내가서 거라 로베 람지 내가서 데브카리움 그래서나 근데 공부 제신에서 로랑지 내가로 대줄이야 퍼진 주당 자원인지 전부라 공부시기 나서 바로도 침배 23년 미쳐배 유인지대 지된 공부 양다고 저배 산전이 토반 요로서 로바 남지 내가서 진짜 로바를 때네 마음반의 안에 산제지 공부 토그래서 어디지구나.
So then we get to their kind of common or general effect of these 7 practices. So we have the 6 perfections plus the practice of compassion. And so above we had their sort of individual results that come from each of those. But here this is talking about the more general results. So in verse 439, it says, through the simultaneous perfection of all 7, one attains the sphere of inconceivable wisdom, lordship over the world. So here, by engaging in the practice of these 7 without exception, the simultaneous perfection of all 7, which is what one is training in on the path of training, right? When one is still in training, but through the perfection of those, through the completion of those, one then attains this sphere of inconceivable wisdom, and thereby obtains the state of a perfect, complete Buddhahood, a master over this world.
더 사주윤 대시도 이발라 니스 사주윤 대시에들에서 이발라 사주윤 대시벌니 지던다 양라부터서와 더 당부 사주 지던다 대시도 지던다 숨바 엄마 주변 데벌에서 엄마 주변 데벌어라 뭐지나 주변 들으시게 자주 선반 남지 사과매 사과매베 신인질라서 왜 심바 니 차르 넘버 체나 사시자에 민토데 윤den지 내스기베 치르서 사사테에서 가르치그래서나 와 사주시거라 그 자주 선반 남지 사과매베 이시 니질라서 왜 심바세 사과매베 이시스도 동반이 무슨도 또 베시들 사과매베 이시스도 동반이 무슨도 또 되려 사과매베 이시스 니모기 껴요 말아 현당 로인의 고 템바주바 나야데 tindeche nyamo kya gora otele ko tongbanyi chanja mato shanda ka nangi omara kesunda sakwa meba se nyamo be kya mebe ishi same gi ishi sura same sakwa sene nyamo kya da chebe to zola success nyamo kya mege to zola same sigora tunda marazu shebani se kaga sache de dura tembajuba nangi ora tinzindi tembajuba jembe tinzindi Uma tenjua lutala nyamo shagira. Tembajuba jimbe tinzindi nyamo shagira. Nyamo betuase. Shitip situ de paksha del shagdoa. Tembajuba jimbe lote shabe paksha shiora. Nyama yebe shul shiora. Otele paksha sigire. O tinto kasura. Saba mebe shisu tomba nyamo sumdu tobe shitere sigo. Teles nyamo kitya yo mara tembajuba jenge mara tembajuba nawa de yo mara shim mangsha shebalya tembajuba nawa yongora garansu kyuchi shibayna taka sedo sina niba chi tanda yana tanda tambu ne juba rantele chachu semba namje sakwa mebe tomba nyamo sumdu toba nyamo be kyanji makwe be ishi te sakwa mebe ishi nyingji la soba nyingji chenpu semba ye sin denge niente da rangeto su ineko saba mebe ishi yorde ninji chembe singe yo marwa tanda de teba chembe de saba mebe same ishi yore ninji chembe singe yora te sonza sanje ji koma tobe chula so wate zindu yore ninji chembe la so be simba ne char number chena tongba ningu sumdu tobe ishi ninji chembe simbe kone tongba ningu sumdu tobe ishi de 파체 이내에 사탕분이 벌써 버시버서 사주바 받아 샤가래 셔라 사탕부터 당분 무슨도 또 사탕부체 동반이 인테네야 고네 고도 펜드 산이 벌써 버시바가 버시 사주바시 인테네 산케도 거라 어텔라 사사세데 고 연된 계획이 사시된 라와서 사사세 명다라 사시들한테는 사시나서서 ngaranzu saya tunga kanga talitani kigyora o tinashiku tombani ngusumdu tobe shi telatani sanje ji yonde kanga kome yonde sama telatani kigyora tisonza saas mingda satan drawe yonde tamje ki shisonza sanje ji yonde tamje ki shisonza sa chuuse ti yonde kone kondo pewe chane ani satan bu sanji ba sasumba sa chuba chan tene sanje rewa o dire char namba shiwa na yonde ji nesu sa shigwe de kares na yonde ji yonde tamje kiwe shi ba so satan drawe na sa shi sayi ngo da yonde kange shimba da sayi me wata yonde 신지 로니지 전부가 소바 관계 전부다 사이 민톱수 사탕불 민지어라 사탕불 로치바 팀만바 지지 사르리 민메자 미세르로 티 민톱수 시에도 민데 시 간도세 다 당분에세 야 어디시 주나
So then we next turn to the presentation of the 10 grounds and looking at the kinds of qualities of those. So first is a general kind of presentation and then the meaning of the various sort of branches of that. And so first then quoting from the auto commentary to the entry to the middle way, this is talking about these kinds of bodhisattva grounds. So we talk about these grounds, the 10 grounds, and really they are, as it explains here, something that is divided. Really, it is the uncontaminated wisdom of a bodhisattva held by compassion that is divided into various like sort of increments that are given this name of a ground. And they are grounds, they are called that because they are the abode or the place upon which qualities arise. So here, when we talk about uncontaminated wisdom, this is referring to the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. There's nothing else that is arising when a bodhisattva is in that kind of meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. Nothing else arises. There is no appearance of true existence nor grasping at true existence. There are no afflictions whatsoever. The only thing that appears within that meditative equipoise is emptiness itself. Whereas contaminated wisdom or minds refer to when there is that kind of appearance of true existence and our various afflictive emotions. So here, according to the Prasangikas in particular, that kind of appearance of true existence is referred to as the afflictive obscurations, those kinds of grasping at true existence, but also the very appearance of true existence is asserted to be an afflictive obscuration, whereas what is sort of left over by that, the seeds, the imprints of that are what are known as the obscurations to omniscience, or the knowledge obscurations. So here, within that kind of uncontaminated wisdom of meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness, there is no appearance of true existence nor grasping at it. And this mind held by compassion, which distinguishes it as belonging to a bodhisattva, because hearers and solitary realizers also have uncontaminated wisdom. However, it is not held with that attitude of compassion. And so if you were to divide those, beginning with the first direct realization of emptiness, that corresponds with the attainment of that first ground. And through the increase, through the development of that, one then divides it by way of the sort of in increments into these 10 grounds. Now, in the same way that we would call a ground something wherein qualities could arise, as in, like, if you have empty ground, ground, you could plant trees and have all sorts of food and fruits and harvest come forth. So too, it is in dependence upon that mind directly realizing emptiness that all of the qualities of Buddhahood are grown, or they come forth from that. So this is then going to be explained by the sort of nature of each of the grounds, what qualities they are infused with, how one attains how that ground attains its particular name, and then giving a teaching on the name of that ground, the meaning of that name. So this is the sort of general explanation.
뭐야, 아니나, 뭐야, 그래서 뭐야,
Hmm.
단니바 지던데 로이스래, 야라던 노스타 담보네, 우말레 주고알 사과메 틴도사,
No.
신나르 차르나 바치완 딘도사르시라, 바데네 카르도스네, 사용호다, 윤내 관계 심바 사회 명토스, 아니 명계 때문에 시, 방지시도 다 담보들에도 담보들 사용호 녀모모자기 말을 텐션다 대박차 그런 게 레바네 삭제시 진짜서 레바 대단 대회 신이 사과메바스 다 사과메베시스도 동링의 숨도 또베 이시도가 티마도 메도가 신다 사마 삭제시도 뒤뒤버시 더 측세래 말이베 라브리단 대화다기 이시 사과메베 유지로 신라 때는 마이노 시송바신다 측세래 말이 Ravritan Treva Taki, Ishore Mariba, Mariba Ravritan Treva Taki. Yamo Tanzigi, Pakshala Sobatis da Trendo Sierra. She Saba Mebe, Tongban Musum Tonge, Yuji Shilla to Nanamino, Shesobashina. Tea Sanjaji saw Matop Sunjato, Mariba Bosaji Leba, Lebe, Sheba. Shebane Malebe Shibora. The young Sanje Matoji Pado, Mari Basaji Genji Malebe Sheba de Kari Oresana, Pagwa Namji, Yamsha Tongban Musum to talk with number Metobe Shidi Chipuri Shivora. Pagwa Namji Yamsha number Metobe Shi Mimba Melos, Tatanda. 동반이 무슨 뜻도 베시 많이 바게 아니때 상미요 말이셔라 상마게 봐도 야티질라나 더불어 시우는 것이거든.
So here, this just for context is within Gyaltsabje's commentary, and so here it says first, sort of explaining the nature of these grounds, that whatever is sort of polluted by grasping this ignorance, afflicted ignorance grasping at true existence, or the kind of imprints of that is considered to be contaminated, right? So that which is freed from that kind of pollution or that kind of stain is considered to be uncontaminated wisdom. Now, this is, as explained from Chandrakirti's clear words. It says here that that which is sort of free of this like eye disease of ignorance, that kind of wisdom is considered to be uncontaminated, that which is free of the kind of obscuration of ignorance. And so it's not dependent upon the nature of the object, right? It's to do with the nature of that consciousness which is perceiving that. If it is not polluted by, or if it is free from those kinds of contaminations of ignorance, then it is uncontaminated wisdom. It isn't in independence or contingent upon the nature of the object. And so here, until one obtains the state of Buddhahood, as for wisdom that is not polluted by the imprints of ignorance, there is none other than the non-conceptual wisdom of meditative equipoise of an Arya. So for those ordinary beings, all of our wisdom, all of our minds are contaminated. It is only the kind of meditative equipoise of an Arya that has this kind of uncontaminated wisdom until one reaches the state of Buddhahood. And in that uncontaminated wisdom, it's unpolluted by even the kind of imprints of ignorance. Those aren't manifest at that time.
Oh, yeah. 어떤다 사제가 살려বে 캠바주 간가 상매를 그러봐 삭제 쉬운 거 말아. 어디서 캠바. 다 사마제 봐도 박배 사 톱차네. 사당부 톱차네. 동반인 무슨도 또 냠샤에 시시그라. 어디 상매를 시거라. 디마도 제도기 내가 냠샤래야 당차서나. 야 동반이 든지수지 또 위나라 메다 동에라서 가려 공부나 삭제 장하래 지사마 삭제 템바트와 나기와라 딘생기 그 레기도 유대 낭친제들 템바트와 나기와라 나란저 강갈티 나기와라 낭친제들 템바트와 나기와라 뭐든지 그 삭제를 치르더라 삭제식도 하더라 녀모 딘생기 그 교연시요나 딘생기 집안에 템바트와 나와요나 삭제를 다 박배 냠샤에 지부 때바주와 나요 말어. 괜찮지 마고 버티래더라. 딜 상메시르 신다간 거 삭제해도. 뭐야. 대야 수디사스. 대야 산제제 사마도 춘제도 머리 바샤지 사 머리 바샤지 말레베. 이시디 가리어서 박배 냠샤 넘버 메도 비시 지부를 해셔라. 제톱스도 냠샤래야 땅차도 서래 제톱스. 동반이 무슨도 또 대도 냠샤로 다 동반이 무슨도 또 어디 봐 샤차도 제도 삼을단데 아니야 그래 가서 삼에 말했다 동반이 셰기나 사출을 내게 찾아서 동반이 셰기나 동반이 삼을 거데 무슨도 또요 말아 동반 또 되냐 그들 때나 연구하라 어디 이제다 반드시 this was 제도지 내가서 가려서나 제도지 박사지 레버션도 찍어서 담바드반지메 tinsin기 박사기 레기 와르서 사제해서 사tun베 바도니모 챈지 마르베 레버여서 사tun베 바도니모 챈지 마르베 레버여서 사제바 톱사서는 시거라 사제바네 타촌바니라 에네 카르도스네 타촌바니라 te sebe, te leva meje, ore, maripe leva yo, maripe pasaji leva yo, re sempre. Maripe pasaji leva ne, yo do osa. Maripe pasaji leva, tenado yo sa maripe pasaji leva asido. O te chikuna.
So here, all knowledge of a Buddha, the omniscient wisdom of a Buddha is uncontaminated. But for those below the Buddha ground, it is only within the context of meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness that one can speak of uncontaminated wisdom. Even when, say, someone who has attained the first ground, when they arise out of that meditative equipoise and are in the periods the post-meditative periods or the periods of subsequent attainment, whatever appears as though it's truly established. And so here, even if one has a kind of understanding of emptiness and has attained any of those 10 grounds, still it is the case that within the context of the post-meditative period, one's wisdom is contaminated because of those kinds of imprints of ignorance. So up until the 7th ground, one's mind or that sort of wisdom is polluted by afflictive ignorance. There is the kind of everything that appears as though it is truly existent, and there is the kind of grasping at that. Now, from the eighth ground, so the eighth ground, as well as for those two arhats, hearers and solitary realizers, they have exhausted that kind of afflictive ignorance. However, their wisdom is still polluted by the imprints of ignorance. So it's not as though they are still polluted by, defiled by the kind of afflictive ignorance itself, but rather the sort of imprints of that still remain, afflicting the kind of knowledge that they have. And so here it is the case again that all of the kind of wisdom of a Buddha is uncontaminated, but for those still in training, when they are in meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness, their wisdom is uncontaminated. However, when they arise from that, even though they have knowledge of emptiness, there is still going to be the pollution of that ignorance, either the ignorance itself or the imprints of that ignorance that lead to there being the appearance of true existence.
뭐야, 다 걸렸어.
Nipani.
야, 어디서 다 제대로 뒤집어져. 사tin 배바도 녀몽바 챤지 말을 배려봐 열라. 사제바다 자정바라. 사제바 톱사스는 녀몽 반사라. 네 자정바세 등명에 되다 라제 자정바니데 롱딜이야 동반이 무슨 또 그라. 어디 손잡고 괜히 반사를 해서라. 제도도 박사지 내봐. 현재 개워시 된듯이. 다 사tin 배바도 녀몽게 말을 배려봐 열세. 사tin 배바도 녀몽 밤에서 녀몽게 레바도 요데스. 녀몽 텐신시 단단들 텐신게 레바 열세. 사tin 배바도 녀몽게 말을 배려봐 열세. 사제바다 자충반이라서 사제바 도서나 녀몽 반사라. ene trachumbani sde nyende trachumbata rangye trachumbani la sigora ene te sebe se nyamo pansare se nyamo sesare tinsin pansare tende long de la tinsin di nyamo imba tinsin nyamo shavre shidu shamar te sebe te leba meje se tinsin ki leba yomar trachum sarwa ne mari paksa ki leba ne yodo se paksa ki leba yore se trachumbata 사제바 토차네 박사지 레벨도 가르쳐 제도지 내버서 tem바트와 나와도 용 거라 대나도 용 거라 박사게 온게 대나 용 거래 스테이션도 어떻게 주나 박사지 레벨에 여도 오서야
So here, someone who has a bodhisattva who has obtained the eighth ground has then abandoned that kind of afflictive ignorance, again, as well as the hearer and solitary realizer arhats. So they no longer have that kind of grasping at true existence. However, as they are still sort of polluted by the imprints of that ignorance, there still is the appearance of the kind of appearance of true existence. So those two arhats and an eighth ground bodhisattva have abandoned the afflictive obscurations, but still have the kind of imprints of those, which are classified as being the obscurations to omniscience, and so therefore still have the appearance of true existence. Whereas for a seventh grounder and below, their pollution is from the actual afflictive ignorance itself. And although that is abandoned at the point of the eighth ground or attaining the state of an arhat, one is still polluted by the kind of imprints of that ignorance.
아야 되죠 다 연대 가르쳐 버렸으나 니지 전부다 연대 자자 중이 소지 맨에 니베 심바오사 니지 전부다 연대 사탕부들 쓰거라 니지 전부다 연대 자자 중이를 소베 소지 심바오사 다 순반에 연대 빛내라 연대에 내섬 대집에나 사시 녀바오사 다들 당만도서 연대 산제지 연대를 소고서 상마대 공문은 집에는 대집에나 사시된다고 손자 사스밍다그래서 시발라야 되다로 시발이면 야 어디 시켜나?
So here, then following this outline, it secondly says what qualities are those endowed with or held with. And so secondly, these are sort of endowed with the abilities that come from great compassion, and these qualities that come these 12 sets of qualities, of hundreds of qualities, that referring to the first ground, wherein one has sort of hundreds, and then the power increases more and more. And so that is the kind of qualities with which these various grounds are held. And then and next is how these obtain the title of ground. And that is really because, again, they are the abode or the support for developing qualities, and so therefore that title or that name is affixed to them. And so then the fourth, referring to the sort of meaning of the individual names, is like that, is based upon the kind of qualities that they generate on each of the grounds.
야, 아니봐. 그러면은 어디 단데 있지라. 사탄 tindi서시. 다 rab가라 소베 사조스. 다 사탄부 rab도 가와니바 트마메바 소바시 살맹토즈디시다. rab가라 소베 rab도 가와라 소베 사조스네. 시고네 조베 개바라 당보네서 사탄부라 연데 갸타 중니세 사탄부들라 연데 갸타 중이세. 니발이야 동자 중이세. 라. 중이서 연데 연대 지점 권내 권도다 연대 사당부 니버 선보시버시야 텔레 마으로 마로 야 권내 권도 펠도 그래서라 권내 권도 배워 보사 개발 니버 내서 어떤 분 맹미다 마다 사도했지라 연대 사는 조수 사 개발 담보 제다서 연대 권내 권도 앞에서 되시 다들 가르쳐서나 스스 내갑지. 니바네에서 사스스 내갑지. 네, 장배 사스스 내갑지. 지마 중에 또다. 남주배 또 공내 공도 배워. 투표도 중화. 공내 공도 토바스. 뭐 대연대지 공내 공도 앞에 어떻게 그래서 투표도 중화. 이 개발 순번에 가르때 개발 니버티잖아. 개발 순번에 사당부 집에 벌신 라바지. 사니발이야 수dim비 벌신 라바서 벌신 게 벌신 라바에 개발 공내 것도 봐. 개발 시번에 사당부 잠불내려 와다. 사니베 링실라 와라 소바tin데 콜레티베 개부 쫓아오라. 왕외 개부 개와서 남이지 개와 공내 공도 배워줘. 남이지 개와 잠불내려 링실라 와라 소바 tin데 콜레티베 개부게 시간도 그래서 그래. 사대다자 제도다 제바가 제바 인제 냠샴바실라 제바는 마이너 대사대 냠샤시 찍불을 사당부식 말해서 사당부 제도 이시도 줄래 사당부식 그래서 디나시 상이벌에 냠샤다 제도 이가 연구로 대 상이벌 사고 그래서 대다자 제도다 제바를 제바 인제 냠샴바실라 제바 메노스 어디 사당부 냠샤시대 사당부래 제도 이시대 사당부래서 냠샤 동반 연구소도 또 붙이불 사실 말해서 대내가 제도지 내가들에 상이 봐와서라 대연대도 상이 배연대 세우래서 어디지라
So then as for how these individually the very joyful and stuff and so forth are posited, so referring to the individual grounds, very joyful and stainless and luminous and radiant and so forth as we go through each of these grounds. Now here it then describes how it is the case that these are sort of distinct, they're posited as distinct grounds because of various kinds of distinctions. They are defined as distinct grounds by means of these various features, we could say. And so on the first distinctive feature arises on the basis of progressive increment in the number of qualities that exist. So on the first ground, one has a set of qualities, 12 qualities that are 100-fold. And then on the second ground, it's 1,000-fold and so forth. And so they are defined as distinct by that incremental increase in the kinds of qualities, the progressive number of qualities that one has on that ground. And then the second kind of feature that distinguishes them is the ever increasing enhancement of excellent powers with respect to being able to cleanse pollutants and traverse the path. And so this kind of excellent power in terms of being able to get rid of negative qualities or pollutants and being able to enhance and develop positive qualities, traversing the path, that kind of excellent power increases more and more. And then we have the third sort of feature is excellence with respect to the perfections. So, for example, on the first ground, there is a sort of surpassing excellence in terms of generosity, and then excellence in terms of the perfection of ethical conduct on the second ground, and so forth. And so that's a third feature. And the fourth feature refers to the kind of ever-enhancing fruitional effects, as in the ripening results that come forth from one's practice increase more and more. So on the first ground, being born as, say, a monarch that rules over the earth, and then on the second ground, being born as a monarch that reigns over the four continents, being a wheel-turning king, and so forth, that is ever increasing more and more. And so here, it is also important to remember that these grounds don't only refer to the periods of meditative equipoise, when one is formally in that kind of equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, but also are in reference to the times of post-meditation. Those periods as well are counted in the ground. So it isn't just as though the first ground is only that meditative equipoise, but it also includes those periods of post-meditation.
뭐야, 그래서 야, 뭐야, 또잖아.
So
그래서 뭐,
I think that will do it for today as we are at our time.
뭐야, 안 돼서.
Yeah, Jigsaw.
Inla,
Yeah.
thank you for these teachings today. And Katrina, thank you for your very clear translation. We'll finish with some dedication prayers now.
May the spiritual teachers lead on the sacred path, and those spiritual friends who practice the path of life. May I pacify completely all our inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Iram Guru Namalakam Niritayanami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings, May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the form have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Ja, ja.